I think this one's working. Maybe. I just got an announcement for it. I don't know if anybody can see it, and I'm not sure how to see the chat for it, or where it is, or anything along those lines. But, you know. This is annoying. Okay, currently, people are watching this one. Alright, cool. We finally got one to friggin' work. I'm going to try to send this to people so that they know that this is working. Awesome. Okay, let me see. Copy. Put it into one of these. Go here, please. Boom. Sorry, that chat is closed. Find an for gee, but oh my. Oh. Okay. Let me see. OMG, YouTube Live, get your together. Publish. Okay. It worked fine last time, didn't it? Like 2 times ago was when we first had this initial issue. And then this time, or then last time, worked fine. No problems, no errors, everything worked great. And again, now this time, I tried starting the stream 3 different times before I eventually just had to do just make a live show. Don't program anything, don't do anything. And yeah, and here's the thing, I haven't changed anything on my end. Like literally, this computer, I only use to edit the videos and to do this. I don't play video games on this. I don't even answer email on this. I do that on my laptop. I just use this PC for 2 things, and evidently it's too much for our friends at YouTube. XSplit hasn't updated. There's been no changes to XSplit. Everything has been perfectly and exactly the same as it's always been, and the last month YouTube has just been busting my chops, and I've been unhappy about it, and I'm going to stop complaining about it now, but I appreciate that you, who have made it, are here on this Sunday morning for me, and Sunday afternoon or evening, or potentially even Monday for you, depending on where you are, and I hope you're having a good day. And I hope the rest of my day is better. All right, let's see here. I see Germany, I see Texas, I see Australia. I think it's Monday or Tuesday in Australia. I see Moderator Matt. Thank you very much for sticking with me, sir. I appreciate the help. Another Australia. Japan. My goodness. It has been rainy and crappy all morning, and then literally about 20 minutes ago, all of a sudden it got bright and sunny. So that's what it's doing here. There's still plenty of snow, but it's going to be in the 30s. It's going to be above freezing most of this week, so we're going to see a lot of melting, and probably my basement's going to flood just a little bit. Not flood, but there'll be a trickle that will be annoying, and I will have to try to mop it up. But, you know, that's the way it works. All right. South England, Manchester, what else have we got? Atlanta, Finland, Sacramento, Florida, Essex, Minnesota, Italy, Phoenix, Florida, Portugal. We've got a lot of people coming in. That's great. I'm glad to see you guys. I'm glad to see you guys finally found the live stream. I'm probably going to end up changing the title and all that stuff later on, you know, when it actually goes live, but that's fine. Just it'll help people who watch it, you know, recorded. So those of you who are watching this recorded, just know that there were technical difficulties, which seem to be YouTube's fault as far as I can tell, because like I said, I'm not changing anything. But, you know, that's where we're at. Let's see, what else have we got? Cincinnati. Bring that sun down here to Cincinnati. I would. I don't know how to do that, but maybe soon. Hopefully. Sounds like there's a heat wave in Australia. That's good. That's not good. I mean, I don't know what 47 Celsius is in Fahrenheit, but I bet it's a lot. It sounds like it's a lot. It's got to be like close to 100, I would think, almost. Let's see here. Hi from Denmark. Paint my Blood Bowl human team. How is your team doing, Adam? Well, I'm currently, that's my next project, is to paint one of my 3 Blood Bowl teams. I've got, well, that's not true. Well, yeah, it kind of is. I'm in the middle of finishing up the Tomb Blades, which are the kind of Necron jet bikes for my my kill team, my little kill team force, which I'm going to show you the Warriors of a little bit later on. So once I finish those up, because they're primed and base coated, and I'm just doing some detail work and stuff like that. Once that's finished, then my next job is painting one of my 3 Blood Bowl teams. I currently have the Orcs built, the Humans built, and the Skaven built. I was hoping to have the Dwarves by now, but at my local shop, I guess they're on back order. So hopefully soon I'll have the Dwarves, but I'm going to probably be starting with the Skaven because we're doing a league at one of my local stores, and I'm pretty sure I'm bringing Skaven to the table just because I think it would be a lot of fun. So yeah, that's where that's at. Let's see what else have we got. San Jose, Cork, Ireland, the Netherlands, North Carolina, Chicago. Moderator Matt's also in 47 Celsius is 116 Fahrenheit. That's very, very, very hot. I don't. The hottest it's ever gotten in Wisconsin that I remember was like 100 or 102, and that was 15 years ago, I think. It doesn't generally get that hot here. It gets into the 90s, which I don't know what the 90s are in Celsius, but it gets hot here. It gets real humid, too, so that's sometimes no fun. If it's like 95, but also really, really humid, that's pretty unbearable. But it's been basically okay lately. Yikes, 116 Fahrenheit, that's not good. Hi from Newcastle, UK, first time catching this live. Well, congratulations, I'm glad to have you here. Let's see here. Eric PA says, playing against Rotbringers for the first time. Any hints, tips, or scary things to avoid? I'm playing Ironjaws. That's an Age of Sigmar question. So you're playing Ironjaws versus Rotbringers. I play some Rotbringers in my Chaos army. Like I have Putrid Blight Kings, I have Lord of Plagues, Harbinger of Decay, Gutrot Spume, a bunch of guys like that. I eventually will build my Glotkin, but it's probably a ways off. Well, a lot of them have, the thing about Nurgle is a lot of them have area of effect kind of attacks to some degree. Grandfather's Gift, I think, is one. Nurgle's Rot, stuff like that. So when you get into hand-to-hand with them, you're going to have a bad time, possibly, because you're going to be taking some mortal wounds just on and off, just from their kind of special powers, somewhat. The thing is about Nurgle, and this is a downside to my army, and most of Chaos in general, no range. Now, I don't know that you have a lot of range with the Ironjaws either, particularly, but if you can find stuff that's got some range, you can hurt them before they can get to you, hopefully, at least some. I'm not a great strategy guy, so I'm not necessarily the right guy to ask, but at my limited purview of strategy, I would tell you to kind of go in that direction. DJ the Lucky One says painting human Blood Bowl right now. Well, that's cool. My friend of mine at work he's going human, so he's probably halfway through his team. He's also going to be playing in the league with me, so that's going to be fun. Let's see here. I'm using Dryads as my Wood Elf team. I'm pretty new to Blood Bowl. It's proving fun, though. Well, that's cool. Yeah, I would love to, I think, build like a Nurgle team. I'd have to get a lot more Putrid Blight Kings and do a lot of work, but I know I've seen nice stuff. Duncan from Warhammer TV did like a kind of a cool, he kind of, if you go back, not even a month, but if you go back a bit, he did like a very quick video about how to modify certain stuff to make certain types of teams that they don't make models for yet. So I thought it's kind of cool. Let's see here. Holy cow, those chaos names are so awesome. I'm going to start playing Age of Sigmar just based on that. Yeah, the Nurgle naming stuff is yeah. That's one of the reasons that I like it too. I like the story, I like the look, the models are great, but yeah, it's cool stuff. I like that particularly. Joseph says, playing collecting Guild Ball at the moment, just working on some teams and helping building up my local community. Well, good for you for building up your local community, because that's what a lot of people have to do to some degree. If you want to, you have to kind of become an advocate, especially if it's like, let's say like you've got a community of wargamers in your local area. You've got people who play, I don't know, 40K or that kind of stuff, you know, or War Machine Hordes, that kind of stuff, the more maybe popular games. But if you want to start playing and building a community of some other game, maybe something that's not quite as popular. Guild Ball is getting popular, but it's still not huge. Some other skirmish game like Malifaux or whatever, which again is popular in certain areas, but it's not huge. You need to kind of, and I did a video about this years ago, probably 3 years ago, about being a gaming advocate. And you basically need to, in many situations, you need to build 2 small teams, which is why skirmish games are better for this. You build 2 small teams, and then you go to your local shop and you talk to the people you know there, you see there, and you go, hey, I'll show you how to play this. You can use these guys, I'll use these guys, and then just go from there. So, yeah, that's taking that kind of proactive response, I guess, to that sort of thing is important. Just sitting and hoping and waiting that eventually some people in your area will start playing a game that you want to play, it's not necessarily the best way to go. You need to really like tell people, hey, you know, this is a cool game and you should try it out. So, yes. How much does the Blood Bowl box set cost? I think it's about $100 retail. I think, and that's got the human team and the orcs. So, yeah. Glotkin always sounds like something out of the Urban Dictionary. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It kind of, he does. That is a good idea. Yeah, you're right on. He does. It sounds like something like maybe like something that you get after a cold. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. Planning on getting back into the hobby soon. It's been 8 years of break. 8 years of a break. Any tips for a beginner 2.0? I would tell you to try to absorb as much stuff on YouTube as possible. Go out onto YouTube and just get as much stuff. I mean, like, there are tons and tons and tons and tons. I mean, you're talking about an 8-year break. So 8 years ago, was there even YouTube back then? Yeah. Technically, YouTube started like 2006, but it was pretty new at the time with last time you played, you painted and stuff. So, yeah, definitely go out on YouTube, find lots and lots of tutorials. Painting styles change over time, too. A lot of people, like the way I do most everything these days, and again, it's personal preference, but the way that I do it generally is I prime, and if I can prime in a dominant color for that model, awesome. But I do that. Then I do my base coating. Then I have a tendency to do a good wash, like a dark wash, whether it's a dark brown or a black or something like that. Then I go back and I dry brush my highlights, kind of on the upper parts, like, you know, I might dry brush highlights onto the shoulders, but not onto the under parts, because you want the light to be hitting from above. And then maybe just some other kind of, I mean, like quickie stuff you can do very easily. It used to be, it was all about, you know, black lining. That was very popular like 10 years ago, where you wanted to paint everything black, and then you would always paint everything right up to the edge, but not quite, so you had a black line in between everything, and things looked a little bit more cartoony. And I don't see that being as big of a thing anymore. So yeah, just kind of look at some of that stuff and understand that trying to find the techniques that are going to make it quick, especially for tabletop stuff, and especially when you're starting out. Don't try to make everything like display quality right off the bat. You want to definitely like work into getting things done versus working into getting things perfect. That's, I guess, the best advice I can kind of give you at this point. Kind of go that direction. So Zachary says, I have a coworker who is a major fan of the Fallout series. Do you think This Is Not a Test would work as a good gateway game for him, or is the rule set too complex for a gateway game? It's a bit complex. I mean, it's not super complex in comparison to anything else, but it is, because I've played it, it is the draw just of it being Fallout, because it's so heavily based in Fallout for better or for worse, that's maybe something that will keep him interested if he's interested in that kind of stuff. But I think that would be a difficult game, just like Warhammer 40K would be a difficult game to get somebody in on the first time. War Machine, obviously there are people who their first game is those games, but it's a tougher climb for some people. So I would not say a game like This Is Not a Test is a gateway game, just like I wouldn't say that, I don't even know, Malifaux is not a gateway game. Gateway games, in my mind, are very much usually like a board game, but with a lot of miniatures, ideas as far as range and line of sight and that kind of stuff. Things that you don't have in a normal board game, you know what I mean? So, let's see here. What are you painting your Necron Warriors? Well, I'll talk about those in a little while. Usually what I do here is first I see people who are posting and saying where they're from, and we've done that part already for the most part, and then people ask questions. And then usually I talk a little bit about the main subject for the day, which technically is not watch YouTube make a grown man frown. Technically it's I'm going to show you my Warriors, and then we go back to more questions, and then it's done. So that's kind of where we're at there. So let's see. I've just ordered an ultrasonic cleaner to strip old models. Do I throw in some simple green in the painted model, or are there earlier prep steps? Yeah, I mean, whatever kind of stripping agent you generally like to use. I use super clean, which is the purple stuff, but simple green is also pretty good. There's plenty of different things you can use. There's not really any more prep than that. You just kind of keep them in there for a while and let them run. Pull them out, go at them with a toothbrush a bit, see how it's looking. If it's not working quite yet, put them back in, Like my ultrasonic cleaner, you push the button and it runs for 3 minutes and then shuts off. So I usually put it in, put a model in or a couple models in there, and then I leave it near me while I'm painting. And you push the button, and then you're painting and you're doing stuff and whatever. And then when it stops, you push the button again. I'll let it go sometimes for like a half an hour, which would be roughly 10 cycles, I guess, and then see kind of how it goes. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But that's one of those things that hopefully will. Hopefully help you to strip the models better, or at least quicker, maybe even better. I think that the ultrasonic can help get things out of crevices a little bit more than just letting it sit in a cup, is going to do. So, yeah. Let's see here. Hello from Germany. What else have we got? Hello from Northern Ireland. Schooner Jr. says, what would be a good gateway game? Well, I did a video about gateway games a while back. I did a video this Friday about how Blood Bowl could be a good gateway game depending on the person, and I do believe that. Other good gateway games, X-Wing. Star Wars X-Wing is a great gateway game, especially if you've got somebody who's interested in models and interested in playing tabletop war games, but has like very little interest on painting and modeling and stuff like that, because the X-Wing stuff's already pre-painted, so you're set. Otherwise, I would say games that are very skirmish-based, that's another kind of step forward, but if you're looking for just straight gateway games, the one that got me into everything was Space Hulk. So Space Hulk is a good one. I know that Megacon Games, the guys who make Mercs, they've got like a Mercs kind of board gamey thing that's a little bit like... It reminds me a little bit of Space Hulk, except it has nothing to... There's not aliens and stuff. It takes place like in an office building, and you have the Mercs kind of guys fighting other Mercs guys. So it's not versus aliens or bugs or anything like that. But it's got, plastic models and, cardboard, hallways and boardrooms and stuff like that. I can't remember what it's called. It's not Mercs Conflict. Maybe it is Mercs. I don't know. It's something Mercs, though. But those... Mercs Recon? Anyway, those type of games where it's like comes in a box, you open it up, there's a board, that kind of stuff. Those kind of games, in my mind, are very, I don't want to say soothing, but as a board gamer, when you open up the box and there's a board in there, you're like, oh yeah, okay, cool. Even though it's, positional and that kind of stuff. Zombicide is a pretty good gateway game because you've, again, got range, you've got line of sight, you've got models you're moving around individually, and you've got a board, though, too. So... and cards and that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of different ones like that. Let's see. What else have we got? Use turpentine for metal pieces. Yeah, I keep meaning to do something like that. Like a lot of the models that I've tried to strip in the past, that have been plastic, I've not wanted to use something like turpentine because I'm concerned that it's going to eat the plastic. The metal models that I've stripped in the past, I've honestly never had a big problem, even with just regular old, super clean, stripping a metal model. Metal models seem to strip easier, maybe because the paint just doesn't stick to them as well, whereas paint sticks to plastic a little better. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I've had harder times. I've had harder times stripping plastic models than I ever have stripping metal models. So the fact that you can use tougher chemicals on metal models, for me, never comes up because I've never had a problem stripping metal models. I guess that's the thing. But there's like very tough chemicals that I'm not going to put on plastic or resin because they will eat the plastic or resin, and I don't want to go that direction. So yeah, brake fluid being one of them. Yeah. Let's see. So there's a lot of people talking about simple green. A lot of people like that as well. Melanie Dawn, I can't believe I overslept. Well, that's okay, Melanie, because this was the third or fourth stream before it finally started working, and we were quite late. So you didn't miss a lot so far. It's YouTube is really driving me nuts over here. All right. I'm hearing a cat making a lot of noise. I believe she is singing us the song of her people. Let's see. I'm making a Mordheim-type skirmish game for my local game store to introduce more people to tabletop gaming. Any suggestions? I guess I would not make sure that each player doesn't have too many models, because if they have to, even if it's like they have to keep track of like 5 or 6, for some people that could be a little bit daunting early on. So if maybe they're only doing maybe 3 models to per team, that's kind of cool. Also, if it's a game that you can run with more than just you and another person, or just 2 people, if you could run with 4 people, that can help. When I run games at conventions, demo games, there's a game that I run called Song of Blades and Heroes, which is made by Ganesha Games out of Italy. And but it's in English and a bunch of other languages, I think, if you go to their website. I think it's Ganesha. I don't know if it's Ganesha or Ganesha. But anyway, GaneshaGames.net, I think, is the website. And it's a very simple, easy to use, but yet elegant and kind of cool rule set that is great for small scale fantasy skirmish games. And you can totally. It's just great for when I run it at conventions. I run it for 4 people, so that I've got 4 players, and I'm giving each of them like anywhere from 3 to 4 heroes to keep in their team, and then I run all the skeletons and the necromancer and all that stuff, and it works out great. So let's see here. Matthew says, I wish I overslept. I have 2 cats on me trying to lull me to sleep. My wife and I got up we got up in the middle of the night last night because some drunk guy came and banged on our front door and wanted to come in because he had a friend who lived on the 3rd floor of our 2-story house. So I told him that we only had the 2-story house and there was no one named Jordan here. And then he was like, oh, and then he left. So that was kind of tough to get back to sleep because he was like banging hard on the door. And that was a weird night. Adam, do you have problems with white paint through airbrushes? A little bit, yes. White paint, from what I understand, and I'm no paint scientist, white paint, from what I understand, has generally a bigger pigment to it than, say, like other colors. And the issue that I have sometimes with white paint is that it has a tendency to dry on the tip, the nozzle of the airbrush, and so it starts to kind of clog a little bit. So then what I generally do when I'm spraying, when I start to see that, what I generally do is then I have like a piece of paper towel, or a pile of paper towel next to what I'm airbrushing, and I will just spray as hard as possible into that paper towel to basically clear everything out, and then spritz just air a couple of times, because now you might still have a little bit extra, which you might then, if you don't spritz first, you might go back to your model and then splatter your model with the excess paint, which you don't want to do. So you basically kind of just dry fire it a couple of times, boom, and then go back to painting. And I have to do that a lot more with white than I do with any other kind of color of primer or anything like that. White can be, because it's kind of chalky generally, I think. I don't know. It seems to be the case. So yeah, some people will keep a cup of water near their airbrush and then just dip the tip in and then blow it out into like whatever. Maybe they've got a bucket next to their painting, or like with me, I just usually have a pile of like crumpled up paper towels. It's a messy thing that I've got going on there, but that's what I do. So that kind of stuff, yeah, is that I find that issue sometimes with white, and I don't find it with, say, black, especially when I'm priming and things like that. Advice, please. I am painting Khorne Berserkers. Would you paint all over red first or gold? I would do... This is what I would do with Khorne Berserkers, and I think this might be what I did with my Khorne Berserkers, which I have done Khorne Berserkers in the past. I used an automotive primer from like the auto parts store in what they call a red oxide color. So, if you go to the auto parts store, they usually have black primer, gray primer, maybe white primer, and that's about it because it's for cars. But every once in a while, you can find like they call it red oxide primer. So I primed all my Berserkers in this dark red oxide, which is kind of a maroon color, and then I hit them from above with a brighter red, like spray paint, just hitting them from above, so it's kind of like the light is hitting them. So now they're like red that fades to dark red underneath, like underneath their arms and all that kind of stuff. And then I threw some wash on them, probably some brown wash, and then touched them up a little bit, and then went back and did the gold, and then threw some sepia wash over the gold, then touched up the gold again with a highlight, and then you're pretty much done. I mean, but in that situation, because on their trim, the Khorne Berserkers in general, or anything that's got trim like that, where the trim is raised, you want to do that last. You always want to paint from the inside of the model out. So that means if the model has got skin, you prime everything first. But then once you start painting with a brush, you hit the skin first, and then you hit so if I was a model, if I was a miniature, I'm a really big miniature, I guess, you'd paint my skin first, and then you'd paint my t-shirt, and then you'd paint the sweatshirt. You see what I'm saying? You kind of go, and I've done a video about this a year or two ago. You'd want to paint from the way out. The reason for that is when you're painting the skin, if you get some on the t-shirt, because you're painting, and you get some on the raised part of the t-shirt, when you paint the t-shirt next, it's easier to paint over the edge than it is to paint the other way around, because your brush will be up higher on the raised edge, so you can cover up any mistakes you made with getting skin onto this part. When you paint, this is hard to do, when you paint this part, the next raised part, again, if you have any t-shirt color onto this color, you can kind of use that. Again, you're raised up. If this is, this is terrible. If this is the edge, so this is t-shirt and this is sweatshirt, when you're painting up here, it's much more difficult. If you're painting this part last, it's difficult. Believe me, paint from the skin and move on the way out. And in this situation with Khorne Berserkers, you don't see their skin, so just paint the red part first, and then move out to the trim, and then do their like axe handles and their axes and all that kind of junk, and then you should be good. Oh goodness. Adam, you have the most... Oops. It said something about being internationally diverse. Let me swing back up here. Dorn Jr. Adam, you have the most internationally diverse audience of all the streams I frequent. Have you ever thought about how you built that following? Not particularly, to be honest. I think part of it, to be fair, is a little bit about time. The fact that I'm doing this at like 9 in the morning in my time is fortuitous to me, because it's about the only time of every given week that I don't usually have something going on. So when I was thinking about it, I was like, well, usually before going to lunch at the in-laws, we basically sit around and like read email and whatever and listen to music and that kind of stuff. Sometimes I watch YouTube. So I thought, well, that'll work. But then I started thinking about it. And I'm like, well, 9 a.m. my time is more like, I don't know, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon over in the UK and then Europe. And so maybe because of that, like if I did it at, say, 6 or 7 o'clock my time, a lot of people in Europe and all that would be asleep, so maybe that's why that happens. I'm not sure. I think partially maybe it also could be because in my YouTube videos, I have a tendency to be a relatively clear speaker, and I have noticed that my automatic closed captioning is usually pretty accurate. And I think that maybe helps people who don't speak English as well. If they turn on the closed captioning, they can read it a little bit easier and see what I'm saying, and maybe that helps. I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure what causes that. But it's an interesting question. Thanks for asking. Should I prime my Skitarii Rangers black before I paint them? Well, it depends on what you want to do with them. If you want to go with the normal, like, dark red kind of theme, I would say probably yes. But again, you could use like a red oxide, like I was talking about before. You could use a red oxide primer from the auto parts store and go from there. If you wanted them to be a completely different color scheme, like you want them to be... I've seen some Skitarii Rangers and just overall just Skitaris that were like a gray, like a light gray cloaks, like all their cloaks were light gray and stuff like that. Then I wouldn't necessarily go with black. I would maybe start with gray and go from there. But it kind of depends on what your overall, like where you're heading in that point. Let's see here. What else have we got? Do any of you paint anything besides Games Workshop models? There are other models, or games out there with models. I think a lot of people do. I've painted, for my Frostgrave stuff, a couple of them are GW that I've kind of kit bashed, but a lot of them are Reaper. Some of them are actually now from, like Frostgrave, they've got, or Osprey makes their own models now. And I've got the Soldiers, because they're great looking, and the Cultists are really cool. I was at a store recently in Madison, Wisconsin, and I saw the box set from Osprey for Barbarians. And like when you think Barbarians, you think shirtless kind of Conan guy, but these aren't. These look more like the Wildlings kind of from Game of Thrones. And I was looking at them, I'm like, well, I want to use some of those in some of my Frostgrave forces, but I'm like, but I also want to take some of them and cut off their hands where they've got like a sword or whatever, and then put on instead like guns and make them like post-apocalyptic kind of like Wildlings with AK-47s. And I'm like, that'd be kind of cool too. So yeah, I think that's the case. You know, the fact of the matter is that Games Workshop stuff within the industry it's a big 800-pound gorilla, and it's gotten a lot of people's attention, and you know there are plenty of people out there who play other stuff, but still when you look at it, I mean, for the longest time Games Workshop was the big seller for everything. They always were at the top of the chart. Now they're sometimes sharing that top of the chart with Star Wars X-Wing, which is interesting, but you know they're still a pretty big player, so that's kind of how that happens, I guess. Where is the promised frown, Uncle? I guess I can't frown very well. I don't know. That's a frown. It's not a good frown, but that's my frown. Yes. It's yeah. It was problematic getting started this morning. I don't know what YouTube is doing, but it's making me unhappy. And the thing is, it's not like I can call them. It's not like I can go into a forum and go, "Hey, this didn't work." They'll be like, "Okay, well." 1,200 other streams happen that same hour, so I guess it, I don't know. It's not, something's being weird, and I've got to try to figure it out, and we'll see how that works out. So just know that in the future, if you go to a stream 2 weeks from now and it doesn't, just go back to the main page and look, because I bet you if it's not working in the stream that you're in, there might be a new one that pops up. So we'll see how that works out. Red Oxide Primer is also good for German tank models, by the way. The real ones were primed with that, too. Oh, that's very interesting. See, I usually think of the German tank models as being very tan color, like that... Oh, what do they call it? Dunkel... I can't remember the name of it, but it's... I know you can buy primer from the army painter that is designed basically just for... Like, it's the color that if you were playing Flames of War... and you were playing Germans, you would probably just use that can straight out of the thing, and then you do the camo stuff. But yeah. Let's see here. I've done some Kings of War stuff, very cheap, but you also get what you pay for. Some units at least. There are lots of great models that come out of Mantic in my mind, but there are also some that I'm not. Like, their undead are great. I love their undead. Like their elves, I don't like their elves, but to be honest, I generally don't like anybody's elves, so, there's that. I'm a little prejudiced against elves. I like a bunch of their Warpath and, like, Dead Zone stuff I like the, what do you call them, the Enforcers, like the human corporate guys, those guys are pretty cool. The Dwarven guys for Dead Zone, which I can't remember the name of, they're pretty cool. Yeah, I think there's some good stuff that they do as well, definitely. By the way, is there any Age of Sigmar roleplay system like Dungeons and Dragons? I don't think so. Like, Fantasy Flight Games did a bunch of role-playing games based off of 40K. relatively recently. Now, that's all stopped, from what I understand, after Games Workshop and Fantasy Flight are no longer friends. And there used to be Warhammer Fantasy role-playing. It was a company called Hogshead Publishing that used to do it, and some others. But there's nothing, I don't think there's anybody right now doing a role-playing game based off of Age of Sigmar. So in that situation, I mean, honestly, if you wanted to, you could use some other role-playing system and then just swap out the storyline. If you wanted to, that'd be something. But there's nothing currently pre-generated or whatever. Matthew says, you guys are just all supposed to say you paint Wreck Age minis. I paint Wreck Age minis, and they're great. You've seen, if you've watched an earlier stream of these from back in 2016, I showed off my first crew, I guess, for Wreck Age. And I've got stakers, kind of like homesteaders that are trying to, farm and bring back the land, and I think they're great models. Let's see here. I've noticed that Fantasy Flight Games is the top 3 games, X-Wing, Armada, and Imperial Assault. I think it's because of the movies that helped support it. The movies are definitely a big deal, certainly. I think with X-Wing specifically, and I see this at my local shop, it's because you don't have to paint them. They look great coming out of the package. So there are guys and girls at the shop who are long-time Magic players, have been never into wargaming at all, and now they're playing X-Wing because they just buy it, open up that weird blister pack thing, and put basically put it on the stand, and they have cards, which they dig cards because they're card players, and then they play the game. So yeah, that's a definite reason why I think X-Wing is doing really well, and Armada is the same way. Imperial Assault, those guys don't come painted. No, you don't. So you end up painting them if you want to go that direction, but you don't have to either. So. But definitely I could see why X-Wing. I mean, the fact that, like, if Games Workshop, in my opinion, if Games Workshop could somehow figure out, and I don't think they'll ever do this because it's not their cup of tea, literally, because they're, the tea, England. Anyway, if they ever made, like, a set of models that you bought or a game and it was pre-paints, I think that it would do super, super well. But that's, again, like I said, they're much more invested in the hobby, being the building and the painting and all that stuff, because they sell the supplies as well. So if they started, like Fantasy Flight doesn't sell they don't sell paints and stuff like that. So they're fine selling you stuff that's pre-painted, and they understand that audience is really interested in having their stuff already painted. You can still paint over it if you want to make like special versions and things like that, totally. But yeah, definitely. Ebb and Flow says, thoughts about Twitch streaming? I heard they are changing creative streams. I'm not a big fan of Twitch. I don't like a lot of their practices, and so that's part of the issue. They just recently, I watched a video recently that they've done something now where you can do these things called hosted streams. So like when you're not live, people can come to your page on Twitch, and then you can say, well, when I'm not live, if one of these different friends of mine who are other channels are live, just show their stuff on my page, and then, at least you're not coming to a completely empty page where there's nothing going on. Okay, cool. Well, they seem to have just recently, from what I understand, just set it up that they're like, well, if you don't have any, hosting set up, we're just going to auto-host stuff on your page instead. So, Linus Tech Tips, if you ever watch any of their videos on YouTube, they do a live show once a week, I think, and they do it on Twitch. And they were getting ready for their live show, and people in the chat were like, why is this? It was a show called Caseytron. I don't know who Caseytron is, but this Caseytron person, their show was being shown on Linus Tech Tips stream, and Linus is like, that's not who we want on there, and we didn't say that was cool. And so it seems like sometimes Twitch kind of does that stuff where they just decide, well, we're going to do this and change things and whatever. Other than these technical difficulties I've had the last month with YouTube, I've always been perfectly happy with YouTube as far as that stuff's concerned. So yeah, I don't know. I look into Twitch a little bit here and there, but it's just not striking me. Like, I never watch Twitch either, so maybe that's a thing too. Like, I just don't. I don't know. Yeah. What do you think would be an easier game to play, Age of Sigmar or Blood Bowl? Thinking about an intro to miniature game that my brother and I can play infrequently, like every other month. I would say probably Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl is definitely more of a gateway game. you get pretty much everything you need in the box. If you get into Age of Sigmar, let's say you buy the two-player starter for Age of Sigmar, you get pretty much everything you need for you and your brother to play against each other, except for you're going to need tape measures. Well, most people have got some sort of tape measure at their house. Okay, well, you're going to need terrain, and you're going to need a big flat area to play on and some stuff and things like that. And you could use books and soda cans to, be trees and hills and whatever, and you can go that direction. But with Blood Bowl, everything's in the box. You can play, put it back together, put it back in the box, bring it back out later if you're only going to play like once a month. I would say Blood Bowl is a good idea. And the thing is that may get your juices flowing as far as, tabletop wargaming, and then maybe eventually you'd be like, you know what, we like this a lot, but we would like to do the Age of Sigmar thing and go that direction. Now, there are other, gateway games. If you were really interested in Age of Sigmar specifically, there's also Silver Tower, which is, again, kind of a board game version of Age of Sigmar. You could look into that. I've not played it, so I don't know a ton about it, but I know it was at least relatively popular, so that's also an option. Yeah, that would be my suggestion. Dennis says that it didn't work for Rackham, Attack Wing, or Dragon Wing. You're talking about the pre-paints, and I do not disagree with you. Rackham, which was a French company, they did Confrontation, they did AT-43. I've still got a lot of AT-43 stuff in the basement, and it just didn't work out. Trying to get it to work out at scale, that was, for those of you who've been paying attention to X-Wing for a while, about 2 years ago, it was nearly impossible to get anything for X-Wing because they were constantly so far behind in production. So you'd be like, oh boy, I need more TIE fighters for my TIE fighter swarm. You couldn't get TIE fighters, not for 2 months, or whatever, that kind of stuff. They seem to have gotten all that figured out now, because now pretty much everything that comes out you can generally get, and they keep everything pretty much well in stock most of the time. Part of that is just business saying, we don't want to overproduce and be sitting on a ton of it, but we always don't want to underproduce and then having a bunch of people unhappy and then leave. So finding that dial-in is difficult. Right now, they can probably produce as much as they would ever think that's possible, and I'm sure most of it would sell. I was just talking yesterday to my friend who owns the local store that I go to, and he said that X-Wing is just crazy right now. He's just been selling it like nuts, and he has X-Wing events in a small store in a relatively small town. There's 65,000 in this town, and he still has 15-20 people coming to events nearly anytime he puts them up. So yeah, that's it's really started to get kind of what do you call it, critical mass to some degree. And D&D and Attack Wing and the stuff from Rackham, I don't know. Rackham's problem was a whole different thing, but yeah, definitely. I know what you mean, though. Let's see here. Anyone else excited for the new Warhammer Quest game? Is that a video game, or is that is there going to be a tabletop version? I played a little bit of Warhammer Quest, I think, on my iPad quite some time ago. I think it was Warhammer Quest. How did you yourself get into painting miniatures? That's a good question. So, like I've said before, the first real kind of tabletop miniatures type game, the gateway game that got me into it, was Space Hulk. And my friend Peter taught me how to play Space Hulk, and I was really enjoying it. And I was reading the rules booklet that came with it, and it had all kinds of crazy backstory about the Imperium of Man and the Emperor and Space Marines and all this jazz and the Gene Stealers. And so I got very interested in it, but I didn't want to play 40K at the time. I was a college student, and it was not cheap. And I did not like the idea of the game being... I didn't like the idea of having to have a whole army. I wanted to play a game that was skirmish. So I started looking into other kind of indie stuff. When Games Workshop was still in... When Gen Con was the word I was trying to say. When Gen Con was still in Milwaukee, I picked up a game called Shock Force, made by Dreamforge Games, and that was a small indie kind of skirmish game, and it was kind of post-apocalyptic America, and I started painting on those guys. So I went online and read about a bunch of stuff kind of early on, and it was mostly blogs. It wasn't too much YouTube at that time. It was mostly blogs and things, because this was late 90s, early 2000s. YouTube wasn't even a thing yet. And I I learned about dipping models. So for those of you who have who've done that kind of stuff before, dipping is you paint on just the base colors, and then you take Minwax, which is the polyurethane varnish or whatever that you put on wood for furniture and stuff like that, and it comes in a bunch of different colors. You get like a walnut color, and you shake it up real good, and then you like literally just dip the model in the Minwax and then try to get as much of it off, and then it kind of acts like a wash, but also a sealant because it's polyurethane. But then it's super crazy shiny, and then you have to try to dull coat it with something and do all that stuff. And I did that, and that's how I first painted my first models. And it was like, meh. And then I got into Battletech for a while, and that's when I tried to start teaching myself how to use regular washes. But I was just basically watering down paint, adding lots of water, which does not make a wash, because what happens is that it looks great when you paint stuff on there and it gets into all the little crevices and all that stuff on the mech, and then just before it dries, the surface tension of the water sucks a bunch of the pigment out of the crevices, and then just you get these weird kind of ringworm kind of tide marks in the flat areas that look stupid. So you have to figure out how to make an actual wash yourself. And then eventually I started finding, you could buy washes from companies, and then went from there. So yeah, literally it was the gateway game that got me into it was Space Hulk. And then I got into Battletech some, and like I said, Shock Force. There was a space combat game made by Iron Crown Enterprises back in the day called Silent Death. I played a bunch of that too. But painting, for me, really, it was those Shock Force guys were some of the first models I painted, and Battletech stuff. And then I started building terrain, and then I got into painting more and more, and then YouTube came along, and I started watching a lot of videos about it and doing stuff like that, and that's where it got. So, yeah, let's see here. How do you feel about using Compendium War Scrolls for Age of Sigmar? Do you think they will eventually be phased out, or do you think they will stay? Will this impact you in any way? I'm fine with the Compendium War Scrolls. I think they're impacting me in that I use some of them for my Death Army, specifically, like my Skeleton Archers, I believe, are Compendium, because they were technically Tomb King models. I don't mind using them at all. From what I understand, a lot of people are saying that the Compendium models or the Compendium War Scrolls are not as tough as the new stuff, but companies always do that. They put out the new stuff and they want you to buy it, so they have a tendency to sometimes tweak it, and make it a little bit better or whatever, so that people... But since I'm not a tournament player, I kind of don't care. Like, I play to have a good time. I don't necessarily play to win. Lord knows, you can ask a lot of my opponents. I don't generally play to win. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Torch says, dipping is perfect for Skaven. I got away from dipping because it was so messy. Before I got away from dipping... So like I said, initially you have this little can of Minwax, and you would actually just dip the model upside down in there and then try to get all this stuff off, which was messy. Then eventually I used brushes to actually get stuff from the Minwax and then just brush it on. You had a lot more control that way. At this point, I still would probably just tell you to use washes instead. It just seems better. But, dipping's not bad. The benefit to dipping originally was that, A, it's supposed to be very fast, except then you're constantly trying to touch up all the dip. And then the second thing is, and this is true though, you now have got your complete model covered in a relatively beefy layer of polyurethane. So you're not going to chip models, is basically, once you've dipped them, they're not going to chip, unless you hit them with a baseball bat. So, yeah, anyway. What else have we got? Dennis says use soap to kill the water tension. There's a lot of things that you would, if you're making your own washes, the thing you use a lot of times is acrylic floor polish, like Future, or there's a couple other brands, but you cut a little bit of that in there with your water and your ink, or your water and your paint, and that helps to break the surface tension. Lester Bursley on YouTube, aka Awesome Paint Job, if you look, he has a lot of tips about how to make your own washes, and they're really nice. So, do you still have the urge to play BattleTech? Not particularly. I played 2 years ago at Gen Con. I played a demo of BattleTech because, classic BattleTech is out again. It's been out now for quite some time. Catalyst Labs games, or Catalyst Labs, whatever. They've picked up the mantle and gone with it. So I was like, I wanted to see what the new rule set was like. I'd heard it had streamlined a bit, and it didn't seem very streamlined in comparison. Like, I was playing, and I think I told this story on a live stream a while ago. I was playing, it was a whole row of us all playing demos, like one-on-one, and we each had like one mech. and we had these very small, like 2-foot by 2-foot maps. And so I was playing across from this guy, and he's like, "Well, I haven't played in years." I'm like, "Yeah, me neither. I used to play, but I haven't played in years." And then the guy started going around and teaching all of us. He had like a speaker on his chest and like a microphone so we could all hear him. And so then he was just telling us, okay, well, you do this, and then you do this. And he's basically just teaching us the game very quickly. And me and the other guy, all of a sudden, were like, yeah, this is exactly the way we remember it. And we just started going ahead. And the guy would come over, who was teaching us. He's like, "What are you guys doing?" We're like, "Well, we're shooting already." And he's like, "Yeah, I didn't tell you about that." And we're like, "Well, we've played." And so we didn't see a big difference from the old way. There's probably little fine tweaks here and there. But, yeah, I don't know. It's just not for me. Now, that being said, I'm interested in, and I'm not usually interested in PC games, but I am interested in the new PC game for BattleTech that's being made by Harebrained Schemes, which will come out eventually. It was a Kickstarter, I guess. That one to me seems cool because you're not in the cockpit like a lot of mech games these days. You're in the cockpit doing the thing. It's much more top-down, turn-based. I'm going to tell these guys to go here, and then those guys are going to move over here, and I kind of like that better. So I might pick that up maybe when it comes out, depending on what my PC specs look at the time, that kind of stuff. But yeah. Let me see here. Ultramarines have been my first army since I started painting last year. I love the color scheme on them. Yeah, I mean, the blue and the gold, that's a pretty classic color scheme. I didn't paint Ultramarines, but I painted blue guys that were kind of like Ultramarines, except they had one shoulder pad that was bone color and the other one was just straight blue, if I remember correctly. And yeah, so I don't know. I like painting blue. It's a nice color for that. Hey Adam, thanks again for all your work. I just received 3 Army Painter brushes and I'm blown away at how good they are. They almost seem worth it just for the handles. They have like a triangle shaped handle kind of, which makes it maybe a little bit easier to grip. I've seen those at my local store. Does carry stuff like that. I think they have white handles, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I've never used the brushes, but I've seen them at stores, and the handle does look kind of cool. It looks like it would be a little bit more comfortable, perhaps long term. So yeah. Let's see here. Baby Poop Wash is my favorite from Lester Bursley. Yeah, it's a lot of his washes. Like when I want to do any kind of like patina on like copper or brass or anything like that, I did a video 3-4 years ago now about how to paint a bronze statue, and the wash that I did to make that kind of verdigris, that was based directly off of his, which I mentioned in the video. That I watched his video, and this is how, So yeah, it works out really nicely. I came for Necrons. Where are they? They're coming in a couple of minutes. Don't. We started a little bit late. I usually kind of answer questions for the first hour, and then I show off the thing that was the subject of the video, which unfortunately this video says, watch YouTube make a grown man frown. But yeah, I'm just about there. As someone who isn't detail-oriented, BattleTech Alpha Strike is a lot of fun and very light. I would like to play a demo of that, because other people have mentioned Alpha Strike as well. Hopefully, maybe at Adepticon, if someone's running it, I can, but I have to say I haven't seen too much BattleTech at Adepticon. Where I've seen a lot of BattleTech is Gen Con. I think that they go heavy at Gen Con. And I'm going to Gen Con this year. Spoiler alert, I got my press pass okayed, or whatever, for Gen Con 50, so I'll be going this year. That's all taken care of. I got the email Thursday or Friday saying, yep, your press pass is approved, so I'm looking forward to that. And so hopefully I would love to get in on a Battle Strike or Alpha Strike demo, because I'd like to find out more about it. I just feel like painting that would be one big benefit, is that painting the models for BattleTech I would think would be relatively easy, kind of like painting Flames of War stuff. Like you kind of paint them all one color. I don't particularly see the point of making something that is 30 or 40 meters tall camouflaged. Seems redundant, or, well, not even redundant. Seems stupid, frankly, to make something that big camouflaged, but what are you going to do? So we'll see. Let's see here. What else have we got? Kamikaze says, thanks to you, I've spent $100 on Age of Sigmar stuff. Thanks a lot. You're welcome. I hope you'll have fun with it. I think it's good stuff, and I've been enjoying it. And actually, it's been a couple of weeks since I've played a game, and I'm hoping to play a game soon. But it probably won't happen today. But we'll be playing again, hopefully very soon. There was a big game going on actually at my local shop yesterday. I think 2,500 points per side. And one guy had, I just stopped by for a minute, so I couldn't sit and watch too long, but one guy had, I think, Scarbrand and Archaon on his side, and the other guy had just orcs, or not orcs, ogres, tons and tons and tons and tons of ogres. It looked like a fun battle, but I had other stuff I had to get done, so I couldn't stick around. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. What do you use to put the models on a pill base before you base them? What do you use to put the models on the pill base? Poster putty. That's generally what I use. Some people use like just a dot of super glue and then kind of snap it off later on. I just use a piece of poster putty. I did a video about poster putty a while back, and I just put it on the base, and then I just sort of press it onto the pill, lid, and then you've got a nice handle. Other people, instead of using pill bottles, like I have lots of pill bottles laying around, but other people will use paint pots. Other people will use dowels, like 1.25-inch dowel that they've cut into pieces, so they make a nice handle. I know that there's a couple of different companies out there that are actually just making handles now that you can buy to attach to your guys, and because you want to have that big handle. If you're holding them by the base, it's very easy to tip them the wrong way or to flip them around and drop them on the floor. But when you've got a big handle on there, especially with me because I got big mitts, you can really kind of grip and hold and turn them the way you need to when you're trying to get just the right paint and upside down or whatever. It's easier to do. So let's see here. What else have we got? Hello, and thanks for the motivation tips. Helped me to start painting my 40 Khorne Berserkers. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Motivation's the hard part, frankly, in a lot of situations. The technique is relatively easy to learn. Becoming super high-level painter, that's also difficult, but being able to make stuff that you're happy with on the tabletop is not very difficult. People think it is, but it's not. The hard part, more often than not, is the motivation, because there's so many other things that you could be doing. You could be playing video games, you could be reading books, you could be hanging out with your family or something dumb like that. So, motivation is difficult sometimes, and everybody's schedule is different, and everybody's ways to get motivated are different. So I try to do a lot of different videos on different ways to keep people motivated and different things that I've found. Like for me, audio is a big thing, so I love listening to podcasts while I paint, or listening to audiobooks, and to me it seems weird to listen to podcasts or audiobooks if I'm not painting. So now if I want to find out what's next in that audiobook or what's the next episode of the podcast, I got to go downstairs and paint, because I'm not just going to sit here like in the living room or whatever and listen to a podcast. I need to be doing something else while I'm doing it. It just seems like a good idea. So Miniatures Assemble says hot glue will also work. I think that's in reference to putting stuff onto the pill bottles. And I've heard that. I almost always get hot glue on my fingers anytime I turn on that little device, so I will probably not do that. But yeah, if you're more competent than I am with hot glue, you can definitely go that direction. Let's see here. Melanie says, Adam, have you seen the Eldari threesome of minis? They are gorgeous. I saw some announcement of them, but I haven't seen the models themselves. Yeah, I know that they've been doing a lot of crazy new stuff. When I was at my local store yesterday, I stopped in. I did see they had the Magnus the Red kit up there, and I kind of looked at the box a bit. But they've been kind of stepping up their model game even more a little bit these days, I think, at Games Workshop. But I haven't really looked at I haven't seen any pictures really of those new Eldar models. But I've heard of the name change and things like that, and there's gnashing of teeth. But let's see. Painting an Imperial Guards Valkyrie for a commission right now. Going to do a freehand shark's mouth. Any tips? I am not good at freehand, so I can draw. I went to school for art and stuff like that. I can draw, but I have a very difficult time drawing with paint. So if you've got that part figured out, good on you. I would just use a lot of photo reference. That would be if I could figure out how to properly paint freehand, I would just use a lot of photo reference and go from there. So. Blake D asks, got somewhere where I can send you pics of my night? Well, on Facebook, there's a group that I've started back last year called the Tabletop Minions Paint Showcase Club. And you can go there and join. And that's where people share images of the stuff that they've been working on. and ask questions about like, hey, I'm stuck on this, or I've got a question about that. It's a great place for seeing pictures of things that other people have finished or have work in progress on, and answering and asking questions and things like that. So I'd tell you to go do that over there at the Facebook, the Tabletop Minions Paint Showcase Club. That's the way to go. Oh, which Matthew just mentioned. So there you go. That's a good place to go. All right, so I'm going to start talking a little bit about because I've finished my coffee almost. I'm going to start talking about my Necrons. So, like I said, I've never done Necrons before, and I wanted to get, with Kill Team, the re-release or the new release of Kill Team, I was interested again, and like 200 points, that's not a lot of models, so that's kind of cool. So I was like, all right, I've never had a chance to do Necrons before because I didn't want to build an entire army, but 200 points in Necrons, that's not too much, so I decided to start working on that. So over here, you will see a top-down of my finished guys. So what I did, I'm going to try to hold these guys up here for you. I'm going to try to get my head out of the way. There we go. So I made them really dirty. I did not want them to be very colorful, and I did not want them to be super standouty or very metallic. I didn't want them to look clean. I wanted them to look really grungy. So I think that worked out pretty well. I also wanted them to look like they were standing on like pavement with like some rubble on it. So what I did was like the bases themselves just have a plastic texture. They have a texture. They're not smooth. Like if you've ever used any kind of plastic base for modeling, for anything, like whether it's Games Workshop bases or anybody, these kind of bases, they have a very kind of subtle texture. So a lot of what you see there is just the flat texture of the base. And then like those little rocks and stuff, those are all kitty litter. And then I sprinkled a little bit of baking soda in amongst the kitty litter while the glue was still wet. And then you'll see on this guy, he's got like there's like a brick kind of knocked out of a building, I'm assuming. And that is actually, if you watch my video about how to make miniature bricks, that's where that came from. That's basically craft foam. And I've got a little like hand punch that punches out little rectangles, and it works great. So let me get my thumb out of the way there. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, he is pretty much, these guys are all pretty much, again, really dark. I started out by painting them, or priming them black, obviously, and then I hit them with my airbrush, and I used Vallejo Model Air Metallic Steel, I believe, which is it's not bright, but it's not dark. It's sort of a mid. Then the next thing that I did was I hit them with black wash, just Nuln oil, went to town, make sure it gets into pretty much all the crevices in every place. The guns themselves I kept mostly black, except for obviously that tube thing, and the acrylic, of course, because you don't prime them with the acrylic tube in there. So this thing, this little acrylic thing that you can see through, you leave that out when you prime them and paint them and all that stuff. Generally, I've seen people keep them in there because they just decide they're going to paint over it, and that's cool too. But I wanted to have the kind of classic kind of green thing going on there. So again, I used a couple layers of black wash, did some other stuff, and then did just a little bit of dry brushing of silver just to brighten up a little bit, like that spine, like the tops of their spine there. That's all done just with a little bit of silver dry brush to get it. See, this is why it's hard to hold on to like a model this way. It gets a little wiggly. I did a little bit of dry brushing on the top of the head for like lighting. I did a little bit at the joints. Like there's a little bit of silver dry brushing on the elbows and on some of the knees. You can see it there. I'm losing focus again. But yeah, that's just basically kind of to look like wear and tear. Like, they had to get out of the tomb, underground or whatever, to come up onto the surface and wreak havoc. And so there's a bunch of corrosion that's a bit knocked off, to kind of get that direction. I dry brushed the other hand that's holding the front of the gun down there by the tube because I needed it to stand out a little bit more against the mostly dark of the gun. This blade on the front, it's for slicing people, I'm assuming. That's mostly silver. But I wanted everything to look kind of grungy and dirty, and the other bonus of this is that it was super quick to paint. Like, I cranked through these guys really quickly because, frankly, there was not a ton there, it's just relatively simple to crank through these guys. Now, if you wanted to get really fancy and, like, work on the color, on their chest thing, the piece there, and if you wanted to like do them differently in a lot of different, then yeah, you're going to expend, more time to make that happen. But these guys, because they're really quite simple, if you paint them quickly and you keep track of what you're doing so that you can keep doing it and do it from guy to guy to guy, it makes a lot more sense and it's a lot quicker. Stupid focus. These guys I put on paint sticks. So the wooden things that you stir house paint with that you get for free at the hardware store, I put 5 of these on each paint stick because there's 10 of them. And I used a little bit of poster pottery underneath each one, and I put them 5 per stick, so I had 2 sticks, and then I was just very easily able to prime them all on the sticks and just assembly line, do the silver, spray them all. Once I got them done with the airbrushing, then I went back to my painting table and I started doing the washes. I started doing the little bit of detailing, and there's not a lot there. Why will this not focus? There we go. For just a second, it was in focus. Anyway, let's see. There we go. So I did not bother to paint, like some people will paint like green in the eyes. I just was like, nah, it's so difficult to see. I'm not going to go that direction. Some people try to paint, green on that crest. They've got it like right there on their sternum. I didn't go that direction. I wanted them to look grungy and dirty. I almost wanted to make them look rusty. But then I thought about it and I was like, well, you wouldn't make Necrons out of something that could rust. I have to believe that at the very least they're made out of stainless steel. Really. Like, why would you make a Necron out of something that rusts? That seems like a bad idea. So I didn't go that direction. I thought about making them dirty, but then I was just like, I just want to make them kind of just dull, kind of, not polished, obviously, not very brightly shiny, anything like that. These acrylic rods are a lot brighter in real, life. If you look at them, they're a very bright kind of neon green. They look a little pale here, but both this tube and the acrylic thing work out a lot better that way. So, but yeah. And again, we've got a couple of bricks here on the base now. Oops. The bases are mostly washed in, again, Nuln Oil and also some Agrax Earthshade, so brown and black washes to give you that sort of, look. And there you can see there's, again, some kitty litter and some CA glue and a little bit of baking soda mixed in. But the rest of the base, because I want it to look like they're standing on pavement, the rest of the base is basically just the regular base texture. There's not a lot of extra stuff going on there. So, but again, it's very quick and easy to go through and paint these guys because I just, they're all very assembly line and simple. A lot of times when you want to crank something out quick, just try to figure out the quickest way to do it and then just set them up assembly line. I've never been a guy who paints one model at a time. I've always been a guy who, if you're painting, if they have to look anything alike, even if they don't look that alike, you still paint them, paint one, move on to the next one, move on to the next one, because you got to wait for paint to dry. If you just paint one and then wait for the paint to dry, you're going to be sitting around waiting a lot. So you want to, even if you're doing like a skirmish game like Malifaux, where nobody really looks the same, you still work on this piece, then work on the next piece, then work on the next piece, then work on the next piece, and by the time you get done with that one, the first one's dry, and you can do the next part of that one, and just go to town. But when they have to look alike, like Space Marines or Eldar or any kind of game where they're all on the same team and they have kind of the same uniforms and all that stuff, you definitely want to do them like this. So anyway, so this is all 10 of them right now, and I have a set of 3 tomb blades as well, and then I will be done. And they are, like I said, in progress, but not completely finished yet. I'm having a problem getting all these guys in the frame there. But yeah, they're I will admit they were difficult models to build. That whole two-handed gun thing, getting the shoulders lined up and stuff, there's a lot of probably extra glue on these because I would glue them to my fingers, and but you don't see it really. But yeah, they're a little tough to put together, but once you get them going, they do go pretty well. Again, down here in the base, we've got just more kitty litter and one of my little fake, one of my little custom-made bricks. I thought about putting like little pieces of girder or wire or things like that on the ground too, like more debris, but I don't know. I just wanted to kind of keep it simple. A lot of times you want to have the base stand out a little bit differently. You want to have the base be a very different color from the models themselves. In this situation, I kind of didn't. I wanted them to sort of be a lot more subtle and kind of put them together like that. So But that's pretty much those guys. That's how they turned out. I'm looking forward to doing some good pictures of them, especially once I get the Tomb Blades finished and I can shoot the entire 200 point force. I think that'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, they were a lot of fun. They were the first ones I've ever done. I wouldn't want to have to do 50 or 60 of them. I don't think. I mean, I could, but I wouldn't want to. But doing 10 of them was not too bad. I was okay with that. So. Adam, is the base of the Necron done already? Lacks a bit of contrast to the miniature, does it? Well, I just mentioned that. I wanted these to not have high contrast between the miniature and the guy. I wanted really the main contrast on these things, really, to the standout. I wanted the standout to be the green. Like, that's the big important part, is that, and again, like I said, looking at it here on the webcam, it looks like a much more dull green. It's much more neon on both the tube and specifically on that piece of acrylic rod. So in that situation, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted them to kind of blend a little bit, frankly. So that's kind of the way I went. A lot of times when you're painting a model, you do try to find something that allows you to have a base. Like if you're painting a blue model, you want to have a warmer base a lot of times to sort of stand out. So something that's like more of an orangey brown, because orange and blue are complementary colors. They're across from each other on the color wheel. If you had like a red miniature, like let's say you're working on painting, I don't know, blood angels, you may want to put them on like a grassy base because the grass is going to be green and it's going to be the opposite color of red. There's lots of stuff like that. But other times you may want them to blend a little bit more and just everything be a little bit more grungy, a little bit more dirty, except for that bright neon green, acrylic rod and that little kind of tube, and have that be your focal point. That's the way I did it, at least. Let's see here. Hey, Adam, sorry if it's already been asked, but do you have any techniques for more advanced basing, rocks, brambles, and whatnot? For basing, my favorite basing material is baking soda, sprinkled onto super glue, aka CA glue, aka cyanoacrylate. That's my favorite material, pretty much, to use for basing. I like to work kitty litter into there a lot too, so it kind of looks like it's bigger chunks of rubble sometimes. I have not generally ever really done a lot of like grassy bases. I'm getting to the point, though, I think that my third, when I eventually get them started, my third Age of Sigmar army, which is going to be Stormcast, I'm thinking kind of heavily about putting them onto like just a nice, simple, kind of grassy sort of thing. And then if I do that, I'm going to have to learn a bunch of new stuff because I've never been a big fan of flock, and I'm going to have to figure out how to make that stuff work. So yeah, I guess my best tips are always go out and look for other people that are doing it online and try to get some tutorials and things like that. I tried to do a tutorial about my process for using baking soda and CA glue. I need to try again because I screwed it up really hard. I glued the base to my finger during the video, and then in pulling it off of the base, or off of my finger, I got it off my finger eventually, and then I glued it to the table. So there was a lot of swearing, and someday that'll be a blooper reel, I think, because I saved the footage. But I need to do that again and try to not glue things to myself during the video. I think that would be important. So yeah, that's kind of where it's at. But yeah, for me at least, baking soda and CA glue is, honestly, I use them on nearly every single base I do. And the reason is because baking soda is very, very fine, much finer than sand. If you put sand on the base of your model, in my mind, it looks like the model is now standing on a field of pretty big gravel. Like if you were to go to scale, if your person's only this high, then sand looks like he's standing in a gravel parking lot, and like big chunky gravel, not that little kind of gravel. So I don't want my guys to look like that generally, which is why, I mean, if that's what you're doing, then that's great. I will use sometimes some sand here and there to add like a little bit of gravel to the rubble, maybe. But generally, it's CA glue and baking soda is my base for a lot of stuff. Not even just for this type of models, but for the post-apocalyptic stuff I've done for other games. My guys for Frostgrave, Wreckage, what else? Oh, even for Flames of War. My infantry guys for Flames of War, I want them to look like they're standing in mud. So I just used the CA glue and baking soda, and then once it was all dried, any parts that looked like they kind of dipped into the surface just a little bit, I would throw, after I'd painted them all brown, so I made the mud brown color, and then I took like a clear varnish, like brush-on varnish, and basically dropped it into the like little flat, like kind of indented parts, so that it would look like a puddle once it dried. So it would look shiny like a puddle, you know what I mean? And that worked out pretty well. So, what else have we got? Dark Side says, I don't have a question, but I like the color of your wall. Well, thank you. It's a little bluer, actually, than what it looks like on the screen to me, at least right now. It's a little bit. My wife did the painting. She's a very good wall painter. Frequently, what she does is she waits till I go to a convention, like Gen Con or Adepticon or whatever, and I'm gone for several days, and then she picks a room and repaints it while I'm gone. So that's fine. Yeah, that works out real well. Let's see here. Necron heads are probably the worst part of assembly. They are a little squirrely, because, yeah, you glue them just sort of directly onto this. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, Necrons are a little hard to build. They're not necessarily a good starter build. If it's the first thing you've ever built, Necrons are going to give you some trouble. But if you've been building for a while, then they're just a little annoying. At least that's the way it seems to me. Hey Adam, is it smart to put a shade over skeletons after dry brushing, as I want to get a dirty effect like they have just come out of the ground? Nuln Oil. Alright, so I did a video a while back, you should go back and look for it, and it's called How to Paint Your Skeleton Horde. I think it's a part of my Quick and Easy series. How to Paint Your Skeleton Horde. In that I told you my step-by-step kind of way that I do it. I prime them a bone color using Krylon, one of their camouflage colors that's like a khaki, and then I hit them not with Nuln Oil, I hit them with a sepia wash, and I get the wash into the crevices and on all the surfaces and everything, just completely cover them in sepia wash. Then I go back with a bleached bone color on a dry brush, and I dry brush and try to hit the tops of things, but not the undersides too much, because again, you're trying to trick the eye into thinking that the thing is being lit from above in part of the paint. So you do that, and then last thing that I do after I've dry brushed them bone color is I take actual just plain old white, and I do it usually the tops of the skull and like the tops of the shoulders, and then that's pretty much it. You can paint skeletons really quickly if you kind of follow that. So go back and take a look after this or whenever you want to. And like I said, it's called How to Paint Your Skeleton Horde or something like that. And that video should hopefully help you out if you're going to be painting a bunch of skeletons, especially if you got to paint a bunch of them quickly. Chonk asks, what's a good post-apocalyptic game? I'm a big fan of Wreck Age, and I'm not just saying that because Mr. Matthew here is the moderator. I really like the storyline. I really like the models. I like the system, and the models are great. First of all, Wreck Age has got, I think Matt will tell me that it's got 120 or so different models out there. Like, they made a lot of models, for a small DIY kind of small company. They've done a lot. You get a lot of companies out there that have maybe a model line of maybe 10 or 12 things, but these guys have done a lot. So I would tell you to go look at Wreck Age, made by Hyacinth Games. That's a good one. Other ones that are out there's one called Eden, I think, which I don't know anything about other than the name. There's This Is Not a Test. There's others. There's one called Mutants and Death Ray Guns, which is by the Ganesha Games guys. There's a bunch of them out there. Like, there's never been like an actual Mad Max game that I know of, like not like an actual one you could buy. I've been to conventions before where there have been plenty of post-apocalyptic games which are very Mad Max-ian, but I've never come across an actual rule set that's like licensed or whatever, which is fine. So let's see here. What else have we got? Good and simple way to use advanced basing is to collect plants and roots from the nature and use these on the bases with sand, baking soda, or flock. I based my wood elves and Sylvaneth like this. I've got a friend who plays Sylvaneth, and he uses sticks that he finds outside that are, he doesn't just generally peel them off the tree because then they're still kind of moist on the inside, and then you've got concerns about like the moistness has to evaporate, but if you've covered it with paint now, that might cause a problem. So he tries to find like dead sticks, that are not currently attached to trees, and he's used those before on the bases of his Sylvaneth models, and they look really cool. So, and I know that Sam does the same type of thing. He uses lots of stuff that he finds out in nature. Rather than using, like rocks that you have to buy from a company, he just goes out into his driveway and finds some gravel, like little tiny super fine gravel, and uses that. And it makes perfect sense. Sam did a basing tutorial video on my channel a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, about basing techniques. Fancy basing techniques, possibly we might have called it, so you could take a look at that as well. Let's see here. What else have we got? Do you watch any Duncan Rhodes painting tutorials on Warhammer TV? Have they ever helped you? They sure have helped me. Fun fact, met his parents when they stopped by my local shop in Australia. Oh, well, that's cool. I do watch a little bit of his stuff from time to time. Have they ever helped me? The tutorial he did about turning Putrid Blight Kings into Blood Bowl teams was interesting, and I kind of liked that video. Like, it did help me. Our painting techniques are different, he and I, which is fine. So I don't know that I've necessarily learned super much of anything. I mean, I'm not like I'm a genius or anything. I'm just saying we go a very different direction in our painting styles. And so, a lot of stuff doesn't apply the way I paint, I guess, to some degree. But he's a great... I would say he's a great, resource if you're just getting started. I would definitely, because he cranks out way more videos than anybody else for the most part. Because I think they put them out once a day, which is super smart as a company. So yeah, definitely, there's good stuff there. I would tell you, like, he never uses a wet palette. He uses a dry palette. And I would tell you that I think the wet palette might work better for you long term. But he doesn't generally do that. He usually just uses like a piece of paper as a palette to, I would tell you to use a wet palette. If I was going to tell him to do that, I'm not going to tell him to do that because he's obviously, knows what he's doing and likes what he's doing. And everybody's got their own way. But if you're wondering about it, wet palettes, I think, a really good thing to use for especially for a new painter. So go watch that video that I did if you want to as well. So what else have we got here? Dark Future was Mad Max. Dark Future from Games Workshop, like back a long time ago. It was Mad Max-like, but I don't know that it was was it Mad Max? It wasn't like licensed Mad Max, was it? Probably not, but it was very, like, it was cars driving around and stuff like that. I remember, from what I remember, that's true. What else have we got? Large sticks can be torn and made into fallen trees and logs for wood elf bases. Well, that's true, yeah. Definitely, like, there's a lot of cool stuff in nature that you can grab and bring in and, use for modeling bases, so that's a lot of fun. Uncle Adam, what do you think about my Slaanesh Chaos Lord? You inspired me to start with AOS and Chaos. I don't know a lot about Slaanesh, frankly, so I don't, I'm mostly, as far as the Chaos that I get into, it's pretty much Nurgle and a little bit of Khorne. Like, I've got Khorne, for 40k I've got Berserkers, and that's about it. But for Age of Sigmar, I'm heavier into Nurgle, so I don't know a ton about Slaanesh or Tzeentch. I think those are, yeah. So I don't know a ton about those, though. Nathan asks, does your ultrasonic cleaner have a 3-minute timer? How many times cycles do you, on average, strip to paint? Yeah, I was talking about that before, actually. Mine does have a 3-minute timer. And then to strip paint, like, I will frequently, like I was saying before, I'll put it next to me sometimes when I'm painting down in the basement, and then you push the button, and then you listen to what you're listening to, and you paint for a while, and then you hear it stop running, and then you push the button again, and I just let it keep going like that. I do that sometimes as many as 10 times, maybe 20, depends. Yeah, it's hard to say, but it depends on the model. Metal models I find strip a little bit easier than plastic models. It just seems to be the case. It's just, I don't know why, but I've had better luck stripping metal models than plastic. A friend of mine took his ultrasonic cleaner apart so he could try to make it so that it didn't run on a timer anymore, and it would just run, and he could turn it on and off and not have it, and then it didn't work after that. So I would suggest not doing that unless you really know your electronics, I guess. So Duncan uses a dry palette because that's what GW sells, I guess. Oh, that could be. It could just be because that's the way he likes to paint. Really, if you think about it, if you want to get conspiracy theory about it, dry palettes probably use more paint because the paint has a tendency to dry on the palette, and then you have to get more paint out of your pot. And since they sell paint, they probably don't want you to use a wet palette as much because, then you're not wasting as much paint, which means you don't have to buy as many paint pots. So maybe that's, again, that's tinfoil hat stuff, but that could be part of it. I know that Privateer Press, I think, sells a wet palette, so, they've decided it's a good idea. I don't know. I don't know why GW never has, but honestly, if you just watch that video, you can use some Tupperware and some paper towel and some baking parchment and make your own pretty cheaply. So that's the way I do it. I still use that one. Let's see here. So yeah, Dennis says no. Dark Fury is not Mad Max, but it's very Mad Maxy and had a lot of minis. And yeah, I could totally see that. I played a Mad Max style game last year at Fire and Ice, which is a small local convention in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. And it was a vehicle-based kind of game and stuff. And that was a lot of fun. That was kind of home-built rules. By the way, I'm going to Fire and Ice coming up soon. When am I going? I'm going to look at my calendar down here real quick. Let's see. Not this next weekend. Oh, shoot. I just realized So the next Sunday show might be problematic. I got to double check on that because I might be in Manitowoc at the convention on the 26th, which would be the next show. So I'm going to have to get back to you guys on that. But I'm going to be in Manitowoc for the convention on the 25th and the 26th of February, and the convention's called Fire and Ice Convention. Matt is on the ball down there and has already linked to the website. So, yeah, I'm going to be there. We will see about live show, maybe. I don't know. I could maybe do one from the hotel, I guess. We'll see how that works out. Anyway, and then I'm going to have to figure out how to get all this stuff onto a laptop. Well, I'll figure something out, but I'll let you guys know about it. I just realized that now. Yeah, so I'm going to be running some events there. I'm going to be playing some events there. I'm going to be playing Car Wars, which I haven't played in years. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, it's a neat little convention down in, or over to the side, east of here in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Let's see here. Blake says, my only real complaint about the secret weapon washes are how long they take to dry. Do a recessed panel line and it takes like 6 hours to dry. I wonder if that's because, well, secret weapon washes are technically glazes. They're not really washes. They're really more glazes. And I wonder if maybe that's why it takes longer to dry. I don't know. I've found that, yeah, I mean, I asked Mr. Justin, who owns Secret Weapon Miniatures, and he basically said that, yeah, his washes are really technically glazes, but if he called them glazes, then people wouldn't know what they were for, and so, yeah, it's a whole thing. But Necronaut Drummer says, I use a hairdryer to cut that time out, and that is a very good point. Hair dryers, if you just go to like a rummage sale or a garage sale or whatever they call it overseas, a boot sale, bonnet sale, anyway, you go to something like that and you find a like an old hair dryer. That's a awesome thing to have in your kind of quiver of different hobby tools. Hair dryers work great for speeding up drying time while you're painting, so you're not sitting there waiting for so long sometimes. Let's see here. What else have we got? Adam, are the differences between certain races within 40K the way you paint them that share similar models? I'm not sure I understand your question. The differences between the different races are generally like they're kind of figured out by the people, by the company that makes them. So like the Eldar work one way and they have very different stats than the Tau, who have very different stats than the Space Marines, who have very different stats and powers and all kinds of different stuff. So yeah, that's not just you don't just paint them a different color and then they're different things. Although, like with Space Marines, Blood Angels are very different from Ultramarines, but technically you could just take a normal Space Marine and paint them red and do all that stuff to make them Blood Angels and blue. So there's a little bit of that within the major races, yeah, they're very different, I find. Matthew says, I have some Secret Weapon acrylics coming my way. Yeah, Secret Weapon last year at Adepticon released a line of acrylics but they're not like a normal line of acrylics like of all the different colors. They are designed specifically more for weathering and making things look rusty. So it's a line of colors that are designed for making rust and wear and tear and corrosion and things like that, which is really interesting. Mr. Justin, who runs Secret Weapon Miniatures, he does some amazing like distressing of models. Like nearly every model I've ever seen him enter into a competition like the Crystal Brush or anything like that has always been like an old rusty car or an old rusty spaceship or something like that, and they look amazing. I think he does really good with that stuff. And I took a class from him several years ago about weathering techniques, which is where I've kind of learned some of my stuff that I do on some of my vehicles and things like that. So the fact that now he's come out with a line of paints designed just predominantly for that, I think is really cool. So yeah, absolutely. Nemesis says, don't use a hairdryer on resin miniatures, though. You have to be a little smart about it, I have to be honest. If it's got a very thin sword and you use the hairdryer in there for a long time with the heat turned on real high, you will probably make the sword a little bendy. Do not use a heat gun for that, definitely. But if you keep it a little bit of a distance away and you keep the heat turned down a bit, it's not too bad. Yeah, it works out pretty well. So, yeah. Blake says he uses a few drops of Secret Weapon washes with some Vallejo airbrush thinner to make it a bit more wash-like. Well, that makes sense. I can see you doing that, yeah. I generally, for my normal like washes where I need to darken things, I generally stick with Games Workshop stuff. The three, which are the sepia, the brown, and the black, which is Seraphim Sepia, Agrax Earthshade, and Nuln Oil. Crazy-ass names. But when I want to do a lot of like glazing, then Secret Weapon is generally my go-to. Excuse me. I also use a little bit of Army Painter washes too, which are also basically glazes. They're not really washes. The thing about the difference between glazes and washes, let me just kind of explain it real quickly. A wash, you should be able to paint a wash over something, and it should go down into the crevices but not darken the flat areas too much at all. A little bit, but not too much. Also, washes generally only come in dark colors. There's almost never any, there's basically shouldn't ever be anything like a yellow wash or a bright green wash. Anytime you see something that says it's a wash, but it's bright green or yellow or anything like that, those are actually technically glazes. And the way that I use glazes the most is I will paint a model black, or I will prime the model black. Then I will dust it from above with white. Again, airbrush generally. And by above, I mean I'm taking a model like this, and I'm shooting the white color kind of down. Maybe not straight 100% down. I might deviate a little bit, maybe 15 degrees any direction. What you're doing is you're creating a light source on your model. So now you've got the light from the sky coming down as the white paint hitting the top of the model, hitting the top of the shoulders, hitting the top of the arms, all that stuff. And then the dark areas are your shadows. Then when you want to paint their coat red or their pants blue or anything like that, instead of just painting over that nice fade that you made, you use a glaze instead, which is a very transparent paint, and you put that over there, and now it looks like you have made basically like, it looks like, okay, so if you go to my YouTube channel, up at the top of the YouTube channel, there's a header that goes across the top. In the middle, you'll see some post-apocalyptic models, but over on the left side, you will see Chaos Warriors shot from behind, and they have capes, green capes. Those green capes were made, it looks like I got very fancy and blended everything perfectly. Here's what I did. I black primed the entire model, then I hit them from above with white, then I took a green glaze and just painted over that fade from white to black, and then it looks like I was very smart and knew how to paint light green fading down to dark green. When I don't know how to do that blending. So instead, glazes with a black and white fade can make you look like a better painter than you actually are. I did a video about this, again, a number of years ago called Understanding Underpainting. You should watch that video. It's one of my more popular ones, and that's, for me, the best place to use glazes. They're very different. Glazes are very different than washes. I'm going to probably do a video about this soon, actually. But yeah, that's definitely... I think it's a great trick that just makes it a lot easier to get things done sometimes. I like using it a lot. Is it okay to prime over painted miniature that seems bad and paint again? It depends. So I have done that before. Like, I've got some Plague Marines, some, Nurgle Plague Marines, where I just painted directly over the really ugly paint job that was already on there, because I figured they're Nurgle. If everything looks all chunky and weird, that's fine, because they're Nurgle. It makes sense. If the paint job that was already on there is very, very, very thin layers of paint, but still ugly, and you want to cover it up, you could probably get away with it. If you don't want it to look chunky, and it's already chunky, you probably need to strip the paint off before you start going, through the priming and all that stuff. It's just the way it works. So, yeah, I would tell you to go that direction. I would tell you, if the paint is chunky and you're not trying to paint something that looks Nurgle or dirty or whatever, then you probably want to strip it off. But, again, Plague Marines and anything Nurgle has a tendency to hide a lot of sins paint-wise, so it's fine. I never minded having fine cast Nurgle stuff because all the bubbles and pits and screw ups in the fine cast molding just seemed like more Nurgle goodness, so it was okay. But if I was painting like something Eldar that was made out of fine cast, that's bad, because Eldar should not have weird bubbles and pits and voids and things like that in their cast, because they should look smooth and kind of perfecty, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's the kind of way it works. Rob Phillipson says, "Hey Adam, I swear you promised us battle reports mid last year." Yeah, probably. I'm still thinking about it. I can't think of a great way to do it yet. I'm not a big battle reports fan, honestly. Like, I don't watch a lot of them. I watch some once in a while. I started to watch a battle report last night. Admittedly, it was a bit later. I fell asleep, so, I don't know. And I'm not a strategist, so that if I do battle reports, which I'm still thinking about, if and when I do battle reports, they're going to be probably funny, they're going to be probably narrative, they will not be strategic. They will not be, well, this is the best way that you should play this army, or here's your killer list, because I have no business trying to tell people how to do strategy, because I stink at it, so I'm not going to probably do that. But if I can find some people to play with locally that will work well on camera and will do a little bit more, like over on miniwargaming.com, they refer to those as banter bat reps, where it's a little bit more the social interaction and the funny and all that stuff, but they're not strategic, they're not killer lists. I'll probably go more that direction if I ever do it. I'm not going to probably go into, I just can't go into the strategy aspect of it, because, like I said, I just don't have the chops. I don't play tournaments. Yeah, I mean, a good bat rep is hard also, frankly. And that's why a lot of them are boring, because they are so hard to do right. So, yeah, that's where I'm at right now, just as far as that's going to be concerned. Tony says, Air metallics look good brushed. That is true. Normal metallic paint has a tendency to be kind of thick and chunky sometimes. And so it's kind of hard to paint well. But if you use a metallic paint designed to go through an airbrush, but you use it just by brushing it on, it can actually be really nice. I have some silvers. I have a whole line, not a line, but maybe 4 or 5 different shades of silver from the Vallejo Model Air system. And I use those for any kind of silvery stuff generally that I need to do. And it works out really, really nicely. I should buy some of the golds too, because that could be helpful. But I don't paint a lot of gold. I paint more silver than I paint gold. So, but yeah, those types of silvers, or those types of metallics, just also because the actual metallic pigment itself is smaller than it is in normal brush-on paint, just because they're like, well, this is going to go through an airbrush, so it can't be too chunky. It works out really nice. So, yeah, if you're thinking about starting to get into that, you don't have an airbrush, but you can still use airbrush paint with a brush. It's fine. And it's just going to be thinner. And in metallics, that's great. In some of the other colors, it's maybe not so great, but it depends. What else have we got? I played Age of Sigmar for the first time a couple of days ago. I have never played these kinds of games before. Well, that's great. I'm glad that you're kind of getting interested. I hope you had a good time. You may be going down the road into some fancy business here, as far as, if you get into painting, you get into building and converting and all kinds of stuff. If you just end up being a player and your friends have got the armies and you just kind of hang out and play, that's fun too. But I don't know. I like the hobby a lot, and I know a lot of people that do. So but it's not for everybody, admittedly. But more people into the hobby is always a good thing, in my opinion. Alvaro says, where are the Necrons? Well, we talked about the Necrons before. So you might have missed that. You might want to go back because they're right here. I kind of showed off my paint job and my thought behind my paint job and stuff like that. But that was, I don't know, probably 20 minutes ago or more. Usually the subject of the show is very frequently not like a bunch of the show. Out of a 2-hour show, the subject of the show is maybe only about 20 minutes, and the rest of it is question and answer, which I'm fine with. That's kind of what the format to the show has sort of turned into, and a lot of times you just sort of figure out what works and then just go from there, and that's kind of where we're at right now. So the Agile Aardvark says, Vallejo Air Metallic works really nice when brush painted, like I was talking about, but things like all-clad lacquer metallic paints don't work well with a brush at all. Don't even try it. I have heard about, there are a couple different companies out there that make these more like, not normal acrylics, but more lacquers, and they can be problematic. Just clean up and all kinds of problems. So be a little careful about those types of metallics. I agree with the Agile Aardvark, who his icon is actually a unicorn. It looks like, doesn't look like an aardvark at all. All right, let's see here. What else have we got? The Game Air gunmetal is not that great, in my opinion. It's almost black. Yeah, like every company's got their own kind of definite range of, like metallics. Like Games Workshop has got, it used to be called bolt gunmetal. I don't know what they call it anymore. Maybe lead belcher, something like that. And I used to use that a lot, and then it was mithril silver, and I don't know what the new name for it is, but I used to use those two pretty much all the time. And now I'm moving more into the model air from Vallejo as opposed to the Game Air. The difference between, and for those of you that don't know, with Vallejo, you've got the model line and the game line. Model line generally is a little bit more for scale modelers. It's a lot of military colors. It's a lot of that kind of stuff. The game line is brighter colors, things that you would use in like, fantasy type models or sci-fi models and stuff like that. And then for each of those lines, for the model or for the game and the model, they have the color line for each one, and then they also have the air line. So game color is designed for brush painting. You shouldn't really try to fire it through your airbrush. Game air is for airbrush, but it's the same colors basically. And then they do the same thing on the model side. You've got model color and model air. Like locally, my local hobby town sells game color and model color, and my local hobby lobby just sells model color. Neither of them sells the air colors. I don't know why. I wish they did. So those I usually have to order online because nobody else around here carries them. So, but that's the way Vallejo's colors work. Just for those of you that are relatively new, because it's a little confusing, honestly. Their marketing could use a little bit of a tweak, frankly. Raving Mad says, if you don't want to buy an airbrush compressor right away, you can pick up an air pig with a regulator and fill it with air at the gas station. Air pig costs about $30. When I first started my airbrushing, I bought a compressor from like a normal bright red like compressor for running tools and stuff like that at my local hardware store, and I think it cost $50 or $60. It's loud. Oh, it's loud. But it has a 2-gallon tank. So it runs, it's very loud, and it runs and it fills up that tank until it's full, and then it shuts off. And then you're airbrushing, and you're airbrushing, and you're airbrushing. And then eventually you use up a good portion of the air that's in that tank, and then the compressor kicks back in, and it scares the shit out of you. And then you hopefully don't drop your model, but then and then it runs until it fills up the tank again. And that's fine. And it's inexpensive, and you can do that. You don't generally need to use a moisture trap as much if you use a big compressor like that, because they don't give out moisture as much as the little ones have a tendency to. So you don't have to worry about that as much. But the little ones, like now I've got a good compressor, it's quiet. It's super quiet. It has no tank. So basically it just sits there, and as soon as I start spraying, it kicks in, and then as soon as I stop, it stops. But even when it's running, it's very, very quiet in comparison to the $60 thing I got at the hardware store. So you could do that kind of thing as well. That's an easy way to go. Angelo says, hello, Uncle Adam. Do you play Kill Team with the campaign rules? No, not as of yet. I might get into that eventually. But, right now I don't play with the Kill. We've only just been, we're just about to start playing a little bit more. I have played it in the past. I have not played it recently because I've been building and painting these armies. But we just play with the normal games. We haven't played with the campaign stuff. Let's see here. Rumor has it that Vallejo's game series include all the original GW colors because originally GW contracted Vallejo at one time to produce the colors for them, but then backed off. Huh, that's interesting. It'd be interesting to see. I would love to see an overall chart of what equals what. You know what I mean? I know that there are some apps out there that are supposed to kind of help with that a little bit. People talk about an app called the or the Paint Rack, maybe, but I think it's only Android. So yeah, that's weird. As a person who now works for a company that does apps for a living, I always get annoyed when somebody makes an app that's only for one of the platforms. It's not complete and total rocket science to be able to make something that works for both platforms. It really isn't. So, I don't know. Like everything we make is generally both platforms unless for some weird reason the client doesn't want that. So, I wish that Paint Rack, I believe it's called the Paint Rack, I wish that that was available on iOS as well. I have something on mine. What else do I have? I have a thing called Paint Pot, but that's basically just, from what I can tell, it just easily tracks the paints that you already own, which is, fine. But I wish there was a good app that would allow you to go back and forth that way and say, okay, well, this color equals this color in all these different ranges or whatever. That'd be kind of nice. I also can't really say enough good things about watercolor or about war colors either. They're nearly as good as Scale 75, but they're super affordable. Roughly $1.15 US per 15 milliliter pot. War colors. I'll have to look into that. I think I've heard that name, but I don't know much about them. I'll have to look into war colors a little bit. Is a kill team made of 60 grots a bad idea? It'll probably slow the game down a little bit. It'd be interesting to try. I don't know if it's a bad idea. I don't know that it's a killer winner idea necessarily, if that's what you're interested in. But if you've got 60 grots and want to give it a try, that'd be kind of fun just to see what happens, It'd be a good experiment, I guess you could say that. Cosking says, Adam, are you going back to Valhalla? I don't have any plans currently. I haven't heard anything about Valhalla. I don't know if they've decided to do one again for 2017. I kind of assumed they were, but I haven't really heard anything about it. I don't know if I'd be able to particularly. It's a week, you know what I mean? It was a week of my vacation last year to go there because it's 5 days. So I don't know. We'll have to see. But currently, no one's reached out to me, so I don't know about that. I am planning on going to Adepticon, which I've mentioned. I'm planning on going to Gen Con, which I've mentioned. So I'll be out and about some, but yeah. Is there any more content with Sam lined up? Yeah, I talked to Sam. Like I mentioned, I talked to Sam when I was at Wapaka, that convention that was in Wapaka, Wisconsin. And we are planning on getting together some stuff. I'm getting closer. I've got to just basically kind of get some things set up. Right now, all the videos that you've been seeing coming out of the Nerd Bunker have all been one-camera affairs, and I'm trying to get the two-camera thing figured out a little bit better. So once that's figured out and the lighting is set up and all that stuff for that, then I'll be able to do that. I also need to figure out, and this is kind of annoying, I need to figure out a way to turn off my refrigerator. So I think I've got something figured out. The reason is because if the refrigerator kicks in while I'm recording down in the basement, my microphone picks it up. So in a short video that I do, just me sitting in front of the camera talking, I can generally wait for the refrigerator to stop, do my recording before it kicks back in again, and it'd be fine. But the tutorials that Sam and I do take a lot longer. So I want to just basically turn off the fridge for like an hour, which is fine. As long as you can open the door and everything, it should be fine. And then I'll turn it back on later. But so it's all these weird little technical glitches and things like that, and trying to get those things figured out. That's kind of where it's at right now. So let's see here. What else have we got? Paint Rack is currently working on an iOS version as well as adding new paints every update. Well, geez, I hope so. That'd be great. Because I'd be interested in Paint Rack. Everybody keeps telling me about it, but it's maybe we should contact them. The company that I work for, maybe we could help them with that. Anyway, Nemesis says, "Is that a bunch of alcohol that I have behind me?" Yes. There's let's see, what do we got here? That bottle right there is one of my favorites. That's Bullet Bourbon. That is That's some sort of moonshine that we bought at the store. Yeah, that's mostly booze back there. Yeah, it's Wisconsin, you know. That's the way it works. I would bet you that Paint Rack is made by fans. Oh, that could be. Yeah, that's a good point. Fans rarely have access to both development environments. It's a labor of love, and asking a person to buy a $2,000 Mac to do iOS dev is a bit rough. This is true. It is interesting to see how, like at work, we do everything on Macs. We do with the Android and the iOS stuff. Everything we do is on Macs. So, yeah, I know what you mean. It's kind of a downside, but, yeah. What software do you use your video for editing your video, by the way? I'm curious. Blake, I use Premiere Pro, Adobe Premiere Pro CC, Creative Cloud, whatever they call it. That's what I use. Let's see. How would you paint rotting flesh or festering wounds on your miniatures? Well, that's a good question. So, for rotting flesh, there are a couple of colors, actually. Game Color has, Vallejo Game Color and Game Air has a couple of colors, which there's like one called either Pallid Flesh or Putrid Flesh, something like that, which is kind of a greenish, like a real pale green flesh. That works out really nicely. And then sores, I just generally go in with some red, throw in some brown wash on the inside to let it soak into if there's like a sore that's inset, like on a Nurgle guy, I will then get a bunch of red in there, throw in some brown wash, let that dry, then go back in and highlight some of the raised parts of the red, that kind of stuff. And then once I'm completely completed the model and I seal it with a matte sealer, this is the trick about making an open sore. It's gross, but there it is. Once you've completely finished the model and you've painted it, you sprayed it with a matte sealer, whether you use Dull Coat from Testers or something else, you then go back with a gloss brush-on varnish and you just kind of put it into the sores so that they look like they're shiny and still wet, and that really helps them make them look like gross. You know what I mean? That works out really nicely, actually. So, yeah, that's the way to go. What else have we got? Adam, I think the more important thing is to find a way to turn your refrigerator back on, or else you're going to be swearing at yourself for forgetting. Well, yeah, no, the trick is also to set an alarm on my phone to remind me to do that, because I've thought of that as well. Basically, turn off the fridge and then set an alarm to remind me to turn it back on in about an hour or so. And then, but my memory's lousy, so I set alarms for a lot of things. Don't don't you worry about that. Thomas Garrison says, I agree, Adam. More boring bat reps are not needed. Check out Striking Scorpion's channel for bat reps. Very narrative and great war table setup. I've watched a little of his, just like in doing research and trying to figure out the way I want to do it. Yeah, I mean, they're kind of cool. They're more narrative. They're less personality. They're a bit more narrative, though, yeah. And he does have great-looking tables frequently, so that's cool, too. They're really long frequently, too. I don't know if I want to go that long. So, yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot to think about with bat reps. That's why I haven't been doing them, because it's a lot of work. Dial the fridge to off and put your keys in the fridge. That way when you head out, you'll remember to turn the fridge back on. Well, that might work. I could see something like that. Although if I'm not going anywhere that night, then it would be a while. I wonder if that would be bad for my keys, because I have one of those clicky things for turning on the car. Not turning on the car, but unlocking the doors. I wonder if that would kill the battery. Probably not. I don't know. Anyway. Let's see here. I tuck my elbows into my sides. I'm assuming we're talking about how to paint if your hands shake a bit or whatever. I'm actually thinking about doing a video about that. Yeah, I mean, a big portion of it is if you can find a seat that's got, like, armrests, that helps. You rest your elbows on the armrests. And then I frequently take, what have I got? I've got a pot of paint over here. So let's say this is my model, and it's stuck to the top like this, right? So I've got it in this paint pot. What I do, and I know it's going to be hard to see, I keep my hands, if this was my brush, I don't have a pencil or anything over here, do I? No. If this was the hand that was holding my brush, I keep these hands together. I would lock my arms against my side, and now I'm painting like this. So this hand and this hand are touching. I'm having a hard time getting them in the camera like that. And I'm painting and I'm painting and I'm painting, but everything is locked down together. That helps a lot. If you are really affected by caffeine, don't have too much caffeine before you start painting. That also helps a lot too for some people whose hands shake due to that kind of stuff. So yeah. But I do want to kind of do a video about that. Ooh, Jake Cook, waiting on my Gen Con housing portal to open up in 10 minutes. You got a sort of early one. Mine was like not until 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon, so that's good. You know, you got a nice one. For those of you that don't know, the Gen Con the last couple of years has decided that if you sign up and you buy a ticket for Gen Con, they will then send you a time, and you cannot try to sign up for housing for Gen Con until that time, and they kind of randomize them. And so there are guys that I know that theirs doesn't open up until sometime in the afternoon or evening, by which point pretty much all the stuff downtown is going to be sold out. So it's a real hot mess, the Gen Con housing, sadly. I wish that there was a better way for them to do it, and they've decided this is the way they're doing it, and I don't know how well it works, but we'll see. I'm going with a big group of guys, and so we basically all pooled together, and whoever got the earliest time is the person who's trying to take care of the room. So I think that we've got somebody who already took care of it, maybe, what time is it now? Maybe about a half hour ago. So we did have like one guy who had like a good morning, like kind of good, morning, but everybody else, like I said, mine's like at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So yeah. Oh my goodness. Let me see. Well, it is about 10 minutes after 11, and I think that it's about time for me to go because I'm parched right now. I'm out of coffee, and I'm a little dry. So I appreciate everybody who kind of helped, worked through the technical difficulties and went through the 3 or 4 different bad launches until we actually got a good episode running. So I'm glad that that this has worked out. I'm going to try to fix the thumbnail on this and fix the title so it'll no longer be called Watch YouTube Make a Grown Man Frown. It'll be called what I originally wanted it to be called, but I appreciate it. So yeah, again, thank you guys very much. I'll let you know about the next show. Like I said, I don't want to miss it, but I think I'm going to be in Manitowoc at a convention, so it might be a live show from the hotel, which means that the internet might be junky, but we'll see how it goes out. But yeah, definitely I'll let you guys know what's going on with that and go from there. But again, thank you everybody for coming and checking it out, and we will hopefully see you next week. And if not, I'll let you guys know what the schedule is going to be, whether it's going to be bumped up a week or bumped back a week, and we'll figure it out from there. But again, I want to thank everybody for coming and sitting through the technical difficulties, and I hope that you guys have a good day and keep painting, and thanks for watching.